Raise your hand if you feel attacked by the opposite side. Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Gender-related treatment should be banned for minors. I repeat, gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
Medical transition is no place for a child. I transition as an adult, and I have medical complications. I have mental health issues. Child cannot consent to a medical transition because kids want to eat ice cream every day. It doesn't mean that they should.
I kind of agree with you on that as well because we have so many rules and regulations when it comes to tobacco or alcohol or any type of drugs. Driving a car, you can't even rent a motel until you're like 25. There's some specific things that we need to put into place that I think would help protect our children because the minors themselves really don't know who they are until they become 25, 26 years old. Their minds aren't fully developed, and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit.
So I did transition as a minor. I was a teenager who had a lot of mental health issues and had been sexually exploited and hated my body. And it ended with me kind of finding spaces where that was twisted into, no, you're just a boy in the wrong body. And it ended with me having my first ever medical intervention being a double mastectomy at 16 before any hormones, before anything else. And because of transitioning at such a young age, in the past 6 months, I have watched my body fall apart and waste away in front of me. I have constant joint pain. I've watched my muscle mass waste away. I've watched my vocal cords hurt. I don't know if I'll ever be able to carry a child. The evidence we have suggests that the best way to figure out if gender dysphoria persists into adulthood is to let them grow up. Because a lot of these kids will grow out of it, and many of them will just grow up and end up being gay or gender nonconforming.
Yep.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
I mean, if we're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender-affirming care for trans youth. They say it's safe and it's life-saving. And there are numerous studies that back that up.
The study that backs it up for puberty blockers is the Dutch protocol, and the same scientists—
I have 10 studies that I can bring to you right now.
The same scientists that brought that up have since rolled it back and said it was never supposed to be applied the way it has. The American medical industry, we all know, is money hungry and has gone off the rails.
I do agree that there are definitely some doctors out there that may be taking advantage of trans people, and I'm sorry that you went through this. Truly, I really am sorry, but trans kids are valid, and it's not a decision that they're making.
Right.
It's healthcare.
I want to speak to that real quick. Like, I came out 13 years ago when I was 14, and I knew, not that I was trans, but that I was a boy. I had to go through a lengthy process of therapy and seeing an endocrinologist and go through different tests and exams to make sure that this was real to everyone else involved. Transitioning and being trans was just a process I went through to become who I always knew I was. It wasn't a decision that I made. It was a life or death thing for me. And if I hadn't gotten on hormones and gotten surgery at 16, I don't know if I would be here.
As a father, I have 4 kids, and also as a trans person, I think that knowing what it looked like for me as a child and that experience of going through all of the turmoil and all of the trepidation around my gender identity, I would not put my children in that situation. And also, I don't think that surgeries should be allowed for minors. When we look at the data and we look at the statistics and we look at the research, the vast majority of these surgeries are happening to adults. They're not minors. Yeah. So let's start there, right? And then further than that, if we look at puberty blockers are reversible. So when it comes to children, when we talk about puberty blockers, that gives them a shot.
Yeah.
And it gives them autonomy over their bodies. It gives them a space that they can explore their expression. They can explore who they are without surgeries, without all of these other things that could have permanent effects. My kids were maybe 8 and 10 when I started my transition. And so I talked to them in kid terms. I told my son, I said, look, you know, your mom, dad wants to be a dad because that's how I feel. And my kids being so young, they understood it. They were like, okay, we're with it, you know? And so as they got older, I would bring them into my world and get them to understand the things that maybe I was going through. But now that they're adults, they understand differences in people, not just trans people, but people in general.
So there is such thing as gender fluid. How
Yes.
do you know that this kid is not going to change their gender expression later on? We really actually don't have studies on children that are taken over long term, like over 10 years, 20 years. You've only been on testosterone 14 years. One of the oldest trans men, Buck Angel, he almost died from testosterone. You're saying right now it saved your life, you may still die from it. You don't know. You're
die
still
happy.
Exactly.
You'll
you're an
die
adult,
for
you can
ideology,
make
and
that
a lot of
decision.
people have died for an ideology.
It's not an
But
ideology.
we have more
is.
people
Who
that
I
are
am.
dying because
It's an
they're not
idea that you were
allowed
born
to
in the wrong
express
body.
themselves. Look at the suicide rate of trans masculine folks. It is at 55%. And one of the factors that could save their lives is support, right? And so if we have folks that are committing suicide because they're not allowed to transition, how do we fix that? If you're
I
telling me
think
the transition
the
for
first thing-
children or minors is something that shouldn't be done.
The first here, I am very sensitive to this subject, as I've been the person who has had to talk people off the ledge when it comes to suicidality. The discussion around how we talk about suicide is a very dangerous one in this community. You know, my parents were told, do you want a dead daughter or a living son? That's not an appropriate way to talk about that.
And I understand that, but
And
it is our
it-
trans masculine youth
I understand
that
that.
are at the highest risk
I
of
understand that,
suicide.
and they deserve help. But we also need to have a responsible conversation that is not using suicide as a means to push them down a pipeline before they have that comprehensive care.
So I have a question.
Sorry, Aris, I know you've been wanting to say
Yeah,
something.
no, because I have a big problem. Oh, yeah, no, so I'm not an interrupter. What I'm going to say is we insult children, our youth, so much by taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are. Like an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do.
Right.
And it's always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body. And so I think taking away kids' agency and the right to their own body is, it's anti-human.
I have a question. Do you believe minors should be able to get tattoos or plastic surgery or consent to the list of
That's
other?
so different.
I
No, wait, no,
understand.
hold on,
I
let me
understand they
answer
are
this
different
question for
things,
you.
but to what
No, you
level
can't
do
even
we?
make that
No, to what level do we give children bodily autonomy over everything they do? Because here's the thing, children need barriers in childhood development. You need barriers, and they need a safe way to push against those barriers. And I worry with the current medical system that instead of giving them a safe way to express themselves and push against barriers, we have taken some of those barriers away. And that is why you see more detransitioners, because those barriers have been lifted.
Yeah, they're not just doling out surgeries for children. That's not happening
I had a
anywhere.
letter from a therapist in a single visit at the gender clinic office
And
before
that
I
was
had
abuse
the
from
first.
that therapist who did
Yeah,
not
that-
Yeah, that's
psychoanalyze
awful.
the
That
rest of
should
your
not
issues.
happen
Right,
to
and
you.
that shouldn't
because
have
happened.
your
Not
issues
happen
weren't
to you.
being trans. There were a lot of other issues that you're
I have a
addressing right
diagnosis
now.
of gender dysphoria as
And
well.
you shouldn't. You were misdiagnosed.
No, I have one.
Right.
Yeah, you had to get a second opinion, honey.
Right.
And how was
Can
I,
I-
sup- how was I supposed to do that when my parents were told
That's
that I
not
would
your
kill
fault.
myself?
But your
Yeah, that's not your
parents,
fault.
your parents,
Their biggest crime in all this was trusting a medical system that they thought would help me, and the professionals apparently not doing the right thing
I
here.
understand, but your
Yeah,
parents were
absolutely
responsible for the decisions that were made on your behalf.
I think that what this really highlights is the importance of you sharing your story, because what it shows is that you can't jump into these transitions, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't listen to these doctors that push you to transition just
Nobody
because you're
should.
feeling a certain way.
Social media brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's this play that they have.
I don't think that it necessarily brainwashes children, but I think there are a lot of people who get into being queer or trans because it's trendy. And I know that's a really controversial statement to make as a trans person, but I have seen it, I've experienced it, and I also find that social media, especially apps like TikTok, give a lot of these kids so much misinformation
Yes.
and lead to people thinking they're trans when there are much deeper issues. And everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young. You know?
I think brainwash is such a strong
Yeah, that's a
word to
very
use
aggressive
there
word. I
when
would
it's
not. That's why I hesitated to step forward.
And that's why I
yeah.
would step in and actually say it's more so of like a social contagion.
It's just, yeah.
What got me to transition in the first place was social media. It had a grasp on me that there could be something else out in the world for me during that discovery. And I played it to the fullest 100%. I even passed as a female for a good, what was it, 6 years out of the 7 that I was transitioned. And later down the road, I went and paid out of pocket and talked to just a regular therapist, and she made me start questioning my own existence in a way, what I can do as a human being, not just as a male or a female, but what can I contribute to the society. And it made me open up to maybe I was born as a male, and it feels empowering to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavy on social media. Like in my transition, Tumblr, that was the place to be for sure. And everyone was talking about their transition from my experience, and everyone was talking about a lot of mental health issues, depression, and all of that. And it was kind of being trendy in that sense. Like when TikTok came out, like that was like a whole nother world. And the biggest thing that I found with that is like they weren't saying a lot of the negative things that were happening in their transition. There was always like a positive outlook on it, like I'm being who I need to be, like this is great.
This is the ticket to your happiness.
Yeah, and
that's how it's sold.
like so much on social media. Like I made a documentary on my transition, and I really went into depth of like a lot of my depression that I dealt with on that, and I didn't find anyone talking about that.
Jen, I personally didn't think I was trans till I saw earlier trans YouTubers. Before I was just gender bending man. And for sure, I also feel like comparing yourself on social media to other people that are more beautiful and successful will create dysphoria of some kind. And some people,
it will affect your self-image for sure.
Because we see all those beautiful trans women that are all dolled up or had every possible plastic surgery they could ever get. You're gonna feel dysphoria. You're gonna be like, I don't look like that.
And
so
that's
I
in
have to go
general,
through
though.
steps.
You know what I mean? Whether you're cis
Right.
or trans, everyone
So social media
is
has
dealing
such
with
a-
that
I've fallen
for
into
sure.
that.
It has
looking
such
at,
a bad impact on
actors
mental
and stuff.
health.
I wanted to be that muscular dude, and I wanted to do
100%.
that. So
No,
yeah,
it is such a
does
bad,
exist.
like well-documented bad impact on people's like sense
Right.
of self and mental health, and so
But I also really quickly just want to say, like, I don't want people to think that, like, social media is turning
Yeah.
people trans.
Yeah, we agree with that.
All right, can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, okay, so my thoughts on social media and everyone suddenly looking or being trans. I think whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're just gonna go that way. I know plenty of femme twinks who went the muscle queen pipeline. It's not a rare occurrence. And so just experience your life, have fun. Try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all fake.
Yeah, but I think it is also important to say that like
Yeah.
social media is very, very effective. You know, I mean, I personally scroll on TikTok and I'm like, do I have OCD? Do I have autism? Like all these different things. And like it
That's a
can
whole
suck you
rabbit hole,
in.
yeah.
So it's important to be aware of those things.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that I've inspired people to believe that it's okay to be transgender, it's okay to express themselves, and that it's possible to live a happy and successful life.
How do you feel about the fact that some of them are going to regret the body modifications they got and going to have
I
like...
think that they should go to a doctor that is well versed in gender care and have the appropriate psychoanalytic analysis done beforehand. That's not my
And
problem.
I feel like a lot of folks are going to social media looking for possibility models. They're looking to see if they're okay. I know for me, when I was very young, looking to see if there were other people like me, because for a long time I thought that I was
The only one.
Exactly.
I thought I was the
right.
only one.
And so feeling like that, like suicide was a thing for me.
Me too.
Right. And so when I did see a possibility model, when I did see somebody that looked like me, that put me in a space where I was like, I'm okay.
sigh of relief.
Right.
I will say there's also a difference from like showing people that you can have a positive life and then telling them what to do. So I think you on your channel are kind of like, hey, look what I was able to do and how this made me feel, versus like, you should do this because I did this.
Right.
So I
And I'm
think,
also, I try my best to be very upfront
right,
about, you know, the
because
issues
we
of
can't help if
transitioning.
someone's
Exactly.
going to change their mind on something. Like, that's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're humans.
And I have to jump
Yeah.
on one more thing with that. Like, if I'm watching her channel and it inspires me to transition, I have been watching white straight men be president for years, and I've not wanted to be president once. So I don't identify with that. If we're going to talk about brainwashing, let's talk about where we see things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically.
People with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that one.
I don't.
I've been convinced.
We all agree.
I think it's
It's potentially both, though.
Yes.
I think everyone with gender dysphoria needs to go through a therapeutic process and mental health care before they make that choice for themselves.
Exactly.
I personally confused a lot of my gender dysphoria for body dysmorphia because no matter how much I feminize my body, till today I still don't feel comfortable in my own body. And now, like, looking among like members of trans community, I see that people keep on getting more and more surgeries. The surgeries are no longer affirming. You can just tell that this person is like struggling with body images. I was able to get on estrogen pretty quickly when I was 22, and my mental health declined afterwards, and I attributed it to being still in the wrong body, needing more body modification, end up getting sex reassignment surgery. I do believe that transition was sold to me as a hardware fix for my mental issues that were not addressed. I still struggle with internalized homophobia that pushed me into transition in the first place. I struggle with borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia. I'm on a spectrum, I'm ADHD, and I have all those issues that were not helped, and I was still struggling with them after transition, and I still do. Overall, after a few years, I came to a conclusion that I was not in the wrong body, that I'm a gender non-conforming man, and I am a feminine man. That's what I am.
I don't know if you guys have heard, but I've had a lot of binary trans people say that it's not a mental health issue. Like, if you're trans, and I know I don't agree with that. Like, I think there's a disconnect between the mind and the body. I guess I'm asking that. Like, is like, do you think that it's a mental health disorder? And
I
it
don't
needs to
think
have
being
therapy?
transgender is a mental health
Disorder,
disorder.
right.
I think, you know, gender incongruence is what they're referring to it as now. It's listed as a sexual health concern, but the gender dysphoria, which is the symptom that arises when you are transgender, is a mental health concern.
So maybe I'm thinking of, like, that's what I'm
Right.
trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say then in a
Right.
sense.
And then
Yeah.
once you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and I feel like this is kind of what the prompt is kind of hinting at, if you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is transition. Whether that be just a social transition, a medical transition, whatever transition fits you, that is the only way to heal your gender dysphoria. When I transitioned, the first thing my mom said to me was, can't you just be gay? It hurt hearing that, but a big reason that she said that was she was afraid of what my dad would think. He's always been very, very conservative, very traditional, you could say. He would make comments about trans people, about gay people growing up, so I always knew that he wasn't necessarily accepting. So when it came down to me transitioning, I said to him, I'm going to do this. Either you're going to be the dad that accepts me and supports me through it, or like, goodbye. And he chose to support me, and we're closer than ever now.
And I think a lot of us go through medical transitions to easier go through social transition.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And
Yeah.
so a lot of our folks that do transition and may detransition, both experiences are valid, but also understanding that we're not mentally ill because we're trans.
Yes.
Right. And I think that there should be a psychiatrist or someone within behavioral health to be able to say, okay, you're in the right frame of mind to make this decision. But I want to just make it very clear that trans people are not dealing with mental health because they're trans.
Absolutely.
I disagree. I feel like transgender is definitely, and elderly trans people afford for it to be classified as mental illness, so it's covered by insurance. Otherwise, why are you getting the surgeries to?
Because
but what
of
if it's not a
dysphoria.
medical condition?
The dysphoria is a medical condition.
It is, but it's in your head. I would say that you have some kind of mental disorder if you're trying
right.
to mimic a stereotype of opposite sex. to
Right, but
pass
it's
in
not a
society.
mimic. It's
The treatment
aligning.
for this mental illness is to transition.
I have a question though,
Yeah.
because I have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. I always have. But I'm still where I am today.
Can I give you my honest opinion? I think that you were probably misdiagnosed.
I
and
don't
that-
think I was.
So you
Do
do
feel
have gender
dysphoria in your body?
I certainly do now.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Well, because of the
you
changes that you made.
want to talk about now, but at the time,
At the time, did
at
you?
the time, I genuinely believed I did. I thought it would save me. And then looking back, I realized that my dysphoria stemmed from some severe trauma that was not handled.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I think that mental health step is so important.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I've heard this from several other, mostly female detransitioners who we had some form of pretty bad trauma that spawned gender dysphoria symptoms.
Yeah.
And we can disagree about misdiagnosis or something later, but it felt real at the time for me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it did. I didn't mean that.
And no, I know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where that's where the mental health treatment really needs to come in and get to the root of that issue, because oftentimes, specifically with the detransitioners I've talked to, that was ignored. I came out to my parents in a mental health facility after telling the therapist that I thought I was transgender. And she told me we had to tell your parents so that way you can get the help you need. It led to me seeing a gender therapist who, honestly, the issues I was facing were never addressed. To this day, no one ever addressed the fact that I had severe trauma and exploitation going on as a young teenager. Instead, I was kind of just affirmed in, you believe this, and instead of even just a little pushback, it led me to the point where the very first medical intervention I ever had was a double mastectomy at 16. A few months after that, I started testosterone because it was the next step of what I was supposed to do.
God intended for there to be only two genders.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, so as a Christian, I truly believe that God created male and female, and He created that throughout life, throughout the nature, throughout the wildlife, throughout Earth itself. And then the arguments come up into the ocean sides of, well, there's these asexual creatures and stuff like that. Well, they were designed that way for a reason, and we humans were not designed to. We were designed to procreate and be able to bring life back to the earth, because we live and we die, we live and we die. It's a rotation of a process of life in itself, and it's its own journey. So I truly do believe that there is male and there is female, but I can respect people's choices. However, that's where I stand on it.
Well, I'm not Christian, but I do believe there's only two biological sexes, and somehow that's how it's been designed, whether it's by higher power or by evolution. I do believe gender expression has been on a spectrum for centuries. So we do have references to people who've been cross-dressing, we have references to eunuchs. And as somebody who went through transition and detransition, when I started taking testosterone, it's almost like reminded me of my original blueprint. And I feel like I went against my original blueprint and I did a lot of damage to it, and I just cannot go back to who I was, because without my testicles, I'm just too far gone in my transition. So that's where I'm at.
Can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, we have historically spent more time focusing on and celebrating several genders. There are several different cultures throughout the world that celebrate the different genders, and to negate the fact that they exist and to negate their validity is just wrong.
There are as many intersex people as there are redheaded people on the planet. I can name 12 people at the top of my head who are born intersex. So to pretend like there's man and woman is just erasing an entire group of people. The God you speak of, the first God that intersex people get to meet is the doctor, because it's up to their discretion of just what you're gonna be when they mutilate their body to be a man or a woman, and that is not fair.
Right.
Right, and I think also gender and male and female is not the same thing.
Biological sex are different things.
Yeah, we're talking about gender, which is like gender identity, the social aspects to being a man or a woman. But male and female dictate sex, so like body parts.
I disagree with having sex and gender being two different things.
Okay,
I
well,
believe
that's a
them to be
fact.
one. So I believe that they're the same. They're one and the same. They're not different, but we have evolutionary problems within the humanity, because I also see that there are intersex animals that do exist, and that's how they're born. But I also do believe that the initial design was for man and woman, and then somewhere along the way, viruses, mutations, diseases, plagues, all that type of stuff that we have in the world does play a part back onto the world itself. But I believe the initial intent was for God to create Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I'm just gonna say it.
That's homophobic.
I know it sounds homophobic, and I understand
No,
I'm
it
hitting.
is
It is homophobic.
That's okay.
Homophobia made me transition, and that's what you're perpetuating right now. I grew up in a very homophobic family, and since I was a kid, I was always brainwashed, said gay is bad. My parents were not happy that I was naturally feminine. They always tried to make me more masculine. They tried to give me to masculine sports. I was mercilessly bullied at school for my femininity, constantly being told that I'm not a real man, that I'm a sissy. And when I came out to my parents as gay, they took me to therapists and tried to do pretty much conversion therapy on me, which failed.
So I don't believe in God. I believe in people that exist right in front of me, and I believe they should have the right to exist. And so
I'm not saying they don't have the right to exist. I'm just
no,
saying,
but I mean,
I'm just saying that
I mean,
was the
they weren't
initial
mistakes
intent.
either. They're just here the way you and I are here right now, and they are who they are, and we have to accept people as they are.
Right, and there are biological differences in trans folks when we look at the brainstem. You know, our brainstems are different. Like that's
Neurologically.
Right, neurologically, we're different.
Yeah,
And
male
so
and female are
how-
different, exactly.
Trans people are different.
Yes.
They've found a distinct difference in the
The white matter.
cortex.
There is no biomarker for trans. Some brain scan of some gay males is identical to female brain, but there is no biomarker for trans. Please don't spread misinformation.
There is science that hints towards it. It's just not confirmed.
No,
Well,
there's,
it's not
there's
confirmed,
research
so-
studies
So
out
therefore,
there
it falls
that
under
That
the
hints towards
belief that there is, but there is no scientific fact to back that up, which therefore I believe that God's initial intent was to create male
I
and
think
female.
if God intended to, if God exists and in the way that you believe and just intended to make male and female, then
And
we
we
wouldn't be sitting here.
yeah.
I believe
Intersex
in,
people wouldn't
in a
exist.
higher power, right, of my own, and God is not this thing that creates rules and binary situations and laws that can be broken or really made. We're just all here.
Yeah.
You know, like I was born in a female body, but I was never a girl. Never, ever, ever. I can't explain why, but that is my truth. That is the fact. That is who I've always been. And there's no way that I'm gonna look up at this guy at some guide and be like, oh yeah, you made me as a mistake.
Transitioning improved my sex life.
Who wants to start?
I could start.
And I'm embarrassed.
Not to say that my sex life was bad before, but I think transitioning and coming into my body and feeling comfortable in my skin allowed me to open up more and allowed me to not only be better in bed, but also explore what my sexuality looks like.
Yeah.
Being trans also like made sex really complicated for me too, because I'm a straight guy and I pass very well, and majority of the women that I've been with, I would have to eventually kind of like break it to them that I was trans and deal with a lot of rejection. And with somebody, I would never let girls touch me or see me without clothes on. Not having a penis made me feel inferior as a man, and that no one would want me, which is why I like rejected that part of myself and never even let it be loved. It took a lot of really accepting that people were going to accept me and be attracted to me and love me and want to give me pleasure regardless of what was in my pants. And that took a long time. It took until I was like, I think I was 21, when my ex-girlfriend and I started dating. From that point on, I realized that just letting someone love me was half the battle. And once I let that piece come into play, I mean, it changed my life.
Do you want to go? You want to go?
Y'all can go, I'll go last.
I mean, so even though I detransitioned, in the beginning, especially when I was on hormones, like it increased my sex drive a lot. And there were a lot of aspects to that that was like enjoyable to explore my fluidity for sure. I was able to date a lot of people, and I think like from detransitioning, it's like the opposite of that. Like my sex drive completely changed in a way that like, there's good aspects to not being horny 24/7. It helped me be more comfortable in my body, even with detransitioning, which sounds weird, but like having a trans male body was like so different from the norm. So like I had to accept certain parts of myself. So like even with detransitioning, it helps me accept like certain parts of myself that I don't have still.
Absolutely.
I did identify as a gay man before I transitioned. And like those relationships, I feel like I always kind of had like out of body experiences when we were like intimate. And even after I transitioned, before I had bottom surgery, I like, just like the anxiety and the dysphoria that I would feel whenever I was intimate or like a partner would try to be intimate with me was just like crippling.
Yeah.
So then when I had surgery and I felt more affirmed in my body and you know everything it feels right to me now, I'm finally able to have those intimate connections with people and you know, form those deeper bonds. So it's really helped me a lot.
I'm so happy for you. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
When I came out as trans when I was 18, I moved to Miami, and it wasn't until I got my gender-affirming surgeries where I was where I did like lose my virginity, because I was just not comfortable doing that. I was like, I'm not presenting in my best light, and I think I could get there.
Yeah, for me it was like I'm not fitting the role that I'm supposed to play in this relationship.
It felt weird,
absolutely.
and you also attract a different type of partner. Back in my day, I used to attract what we call a chaser versus someone who was genuinely attracted to the female form, which is someone who I wanted to, like that's the role I felt. And so that's where I was comfortable, and now I'm comfortable. In Virginia, the T word did not exist. That was on Jerry Springer and Maury Povich, and that's where that stayed. No one was trans. And so I transitioned when I was about 18. I moved to Miami, and my joke is that I hit the tarmac and I said, I'm a woman, by the way. I remember I came out to my mom and I was super nervous because I'd come out as gay years and years before, because that was so much easier. But when I came out, I remember my mom just asked if I was happy, if I was healthy, and if I was gonna finish school, because she had already paid for it. And I said yes.
Can the disagree step forward?
Transition definitely ruined my sex life. I was fine with my penis, but a year after estrogen, I felt like that part didn't belong on me anymore. So I went ahead and had sex reassignment surgery. After that, my sex drive was gone pretty much. I kept on having complications. I wasn't able to keep my neovagina open despite rigorous dilation. I had multiple revisions, including colon vaginoplasty. I just got some of my sex drive back last year when I started detransitioning with testosterone, but it's kind of traumatic to have male sex drive back without my penis. Also, I want to say that sexuality is fluid. My sexuality has definitely changed once I lost my testosterone. Before, I was strictly attracted to men. After I lost my testosterone, I was attracted to people in general, because now I didn't have this like male sex drive, so I couldn't relate to men as much, you know, as I wanted to have sex, but I just wanted to hold hands and cuddle. And now my body dysmorphia / actual gender dysphoria as well is worse than ever before. I do feel like I'm stuck in a surgically created body. I just don't think I've been really myself by trying to become a woman. Yeah, so transition did take a lot from me.
Must be really, really hard. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
If you had like found the results that you desired in the beginning, would you feel differently than you do now?
No, because I realized I just miss being a man, you know, I just miss being obsessed about sex and money. I don't want to do the whole emotional thing. And I'm talking about stereotypes, okay? So I regret, it's just like now I'm a medical patient for life. Also having sex drive back, it just reminds me that I lost all these years. I could have been having fun, whether it's chasers or, I definitely have internalized homophobia. So internalized homophobia also pushed me into transition, because I felt like chasers weren't good enough, because I wanted to be a woman. I wanted to escape my homosexuality. But now I realize at the end of the day, I'm a gay man, and I'm still living with internalized homophobia, because therapists actually never helped me with that.
It's fascinating that you say that, because I dated men and women, and in my transition, I felt like I had an internalized homophobia when I was with men because I didn't feel like a gay man. And that was really hard for me to like figure out because I had had this journey for so long, and a lot of sexual experiences were good, but I was on Grindr and I'm sleeping with these men and they're treating me how I would want to be treated in a social setting, but I'm like, I was really, really masculine in my presentation, but I tended to be kind of feminine in my roles within sex. And so I think that also got me to realize that I wanted to detransition because it was a reflection of the relationships that I had. Like, to follow kind of some stereotypes, like I did miss being a woman in some of those like social settings, like with how women interacted with me, with how men interacted with me. Like, so yeah, that's heavily relatable to that for sure. So I do not regret my transition. Shocking, I know. That was like a really great time for me in the beginning. I really was able to explore and express myself in ways that I could not have done without hormones and surgery. I learned so much about how people treat people based on gender and looks in general. I feel like I would not be the person, especially the confidence and security that I have within myself if I didn't transition as presenting as a woman in this world. My dynamic with men in general is so much different. I mean, I was very insecure, very submissive, very quiet, and now I'm able to speak up for myself because of that.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say, during my transition, I didn't actually have a high sex drive from the hormones, and ever since I came back, my sex drive has been higher ever since, and I think it's because I'm no longer on the estrogen. My testosterone levels are increased after I changed back to being who I was originally born as, and it also kind of opened up my eyes to say, maybe I wasn't really a female. This is probably what I would like my future spouse to have, to look upon it. And I'm proud that I actually have that sex drive back again because I felt like I lost it for a long time.
The LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting as they claim.
Musical chairs.
Musical chairs?
Yeah. I'm embarrassed to agree. That is true information.
There's still so much transphobia within the
Yes, there
people in the
is.
LGBT community that hasn't been addressed yet.
Shoot, there's transphobia within trans people.
Absolutely.
When I was transitioning in high school, I searched for acceptance from the cis hetero world. And now I feel like I'm doing the opposite and searching for acceptance from my own community half the time. Like when I was in college, the queer community on my campus hated me because I did like heteronormative like guy stuff. I played lacrosse, I was in a frat, but like I wasn't that guy, I guess, that they had in their head. And every time I would go to the LGBT club meetings, I would get like they would stare into my soul. Like I was just this awful thing. And it's always just made me feel invisible and small in whatever space I'm in. And I find that just really disheartening.
And it happens in a lot of other cultures and communities as well too. So
It's funny that
it just
you-
happens.
You mentioned like the transitioning in high school part and like that shift from, you know, searching for acceptance outside and then turning around and then having to search for acceptance within the community.
Yeah.
Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when, you know, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore until they knew, and then you get that icky feeling of
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you only want me here
Because I'm
because of
trans.
that.
Yeah, like,
Sure.
And
Right.
you know, now I have the D-trans aspect where no community wants me. No one. Like I'm still part of the I'm part of the LGB part, but I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me and it didn't matter what I was.
right.
But then all of a sudden detransitioning was the thing that I've been called a traitor.
Yeah,
I've
sure,
been
me too.
You know, it's
Me too.
They don't want me. The rest of the world doesn't want me.
That's not true. That's not true.
It can often
want you.
feel that way. It can
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
isolating.
Yeah, but it
feels
feels
that
really
way.
isolating. Like this is not a club.
It's not a
you know,
club.
and it's not like a personality trait that I'm just taking up. And God forbid one day I change my mind. I won't, but like, or something happens where I have to detransition. I would hope that the people who stood by my side through everything else would still be there for me because of who I am. Period. and not because of an effing label over my head.
And even when I transitioned, I dealt with the traitor to everyone. It was, you know, oh, you want to be a man and the patriarchy. And I was like, I get it, but also, but what I found very interesting was like this divide between trans men and trans women. When I first started doing a lot of advocacy, I was told that just being in the space, that I was taking up too much room, that I was taking up too much space and don't speak and all of these things. And I was like, wait a minute, but I'm trans too, right? This community also belongs to us too. Right. So that was something that I grappled with for a while.
I hung out with a lot of gay women, and then when I transitioned, I definitely lost my space there, and that was like really hard for me to navigate because being shunned out of these female spaces for me was really hard and difficult. And then when I got to the trans male community, there was a lot of competition. Who looked the best, who passed the best, like that was very difficult.
Oh yeah.
Shoot, fortunately I had a full beard, so it was like an easily, like, you know what I mean? Like, but still, like, I heavily resonate with trans men still, and I definitely resonate with trans women from detransitioning and gender non-conforming people. So it's like, where do I belong?
Weird position to be in because it's like one community, like I said, doesn't really want you, but you don't fit in. You can't really go all the way back, so you don't fit in with the rest of them.
We just shouldn't have to categorize.
Yeah,
Like, we shouldn't have to float around, wonder where we belong. Like,
we have the other detransitioners,
like,
but even then, we're all still vastly different individuals who have vastly different life experience, political views, religious beliefs.
Right.
You know,
You're not just
experience how we
detransition.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
that's no different
Experience how
with
we
the trans
are.
community, right?
In some ways, it's empowering because it feels like even though all this happened, you're being seen as an individual for almost the first time after, you know, spending my high school years being lumped in by both the LGBT community and the rest of the people in a category. But it's also very isolating because you don't have really that community support that other places get.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye, y'all.
Thank you guys so much.
I do
This was really awesome.
So trendtastic.
It's great to talk to all of you.